Well, it's another day here with Wake Up with Casey, and today I want to talk about energy. Energy to heal from traumas and energy to manifest goals. What is that like, and how do we do that? Today, I have a very special guest joining us to talk about that. Lisa Erickson, please welcome.
Thank you,
Welcome, Lisa.
Kimberly. Thank you. And I love the introduction to your show. That was so centery, beautiful.
Thank you. I do everything like intuitively, kind of like with colors
Hmm.
and like what I represent, what I value,
Hmm.
and what I'm trying to do to help others. So I thought that was perfect, and I created that myself. So I'm proud
It
of
was
myself.
very beautiful. Yes, wonderful.
So Lisa, what started with your journey and discovering about energy,
Mhm.
and how do you apply it today to help others?
Yeah. Well, really, 35 years ago, I was a young woman just out of college struggling with stress. I didn't really realize it. I was having stomach aches and headaches, and doctors couldn't find anything wrong. And I ended up in a yoga and meditation class, which wasn't that common then. Now it's very common. And it happened to be a tradition that incorporated chakra work. So energy center work. So my introduction really was through meditation and chakra meditation as a spiritual platform. But eventually I went on to study other modalities, chakra based mostly, which focused more on them as a source of healing. So there's really kind of spiritual traditions, energy medicine traditions, and I've kind of brought them all together. So it was a personal journey at first, which then transformed into how can I help others work with this?
Well, I am so glad that inspired you. And it's really, because I like to study about history.
Hmm.
And it actually, from my understanding, it was, over 3,000 or even more years ago in Asia and that culture. They knew about energy. They knew about the
Mhm.
chakras. Is that safe to say?
Absolutely. The word chakra is a Sanskrit word. So it comes from those ancient Indian traditions. And yes, it's amazing some of the things that they wrote about the connections between the energy body and the physical body. What I will say, though, that's so fascinating is there's actually energy healing traditions from all over the world going way back. They don't all use the word chakra because that is a Sanskrit word from that part of the world. They might use other words, but what's so amazing is the overlap and the similarities in their mappings of the energy bodies. It's like different cultures, different healers from around the world discovered the same things, even though they may use different words.
Or it was in a different language based on the time period back then.
Yeah, exactly.
And what I find fascinating about this is they're all in parts of the world doing the same thing, but in a different language. And I'm like, how did they get that information?
Yeah.
How did they know or understand about that? Who taught them that?
A lot of theories on that. Yeah, a lot of theories on that for sure.
But there's writings. I mean, I go back to the Sumerians,
Yeah.
and what they wrote about and how they got their information.
Yeah.
So I find that very fascinating. And, you know, can you just touch base for those that might not understand what chakras are?
Yeah. Well, we have a energy anatomy or subtle anatomy, just like we have a physical anatomy. So in our physical anatomy, we have a stomach, we have a heart, we have our lungs, right? In our energy anatomy, we have both channels and centers. And the centers are like organs. And we call them chakras. Other people might call them energy centers, different languages. As I mentioned, chakra, the source of that word is Sanskrit, but really it means wheel or wheel of light, and it's like the main centers of energy in the body from which channels of energy flow outward. And depending on what system you're using, we may have anywhere from 4 to 10 major chakras. But the system most people are familiar with nowadays is the 7 chakra system. 7 main chakras going right along, even with your spine, parallel with your spine, from your tailbone up to the crown of your head. And then we have many other smaller chakras throughout our body as well.
Wow. And, studying the chakras myself, and what I found fascinating is that the 7 chakras that you mentioned also carries, holds, and resonates with a note.
Mm.
And I
Yeah,
find that fascinating because all those notes, that frequency, the tone and vibration affects the energy.
mm-hmm.
It either helps the healing, brings the vibration up to another level of your state of being, or it can hinder it, clog it up, and then bring your energy low.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
Yeah,
7 notes,
yeah.
7 chakras. So I find that very fascinating.
Yeah, sound healing is such a fantastic way to work with the chakras in terms of, like, you're talking about that sound frequency. And then there's light frequencies, light vibrational levels. And then there's visuals that tie to each chakra. And so there's so many different ways to work with them. Really, I find it's really individual, like what helps someone tune in to vibration. Some are very sound driven, some are more visual, some are more kinesthetic, how it feels in their body. Nature, the elements, all the chakras are tied to a different element: air, earth, water, fire. So exposure to those elements can help you with clearing or empowering a particular center. Each center is associated with different glands in your body, different emotions. So it's just endless, the number of connections and the ways to work with them.
Wow. And
Yeah.
then you use energy healing for trauma. Can you share with us, what it's like to be, like, if I wanted to be a client,
Mhm.
what traumas do you deal with the energy work to heal?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think of the energy body as like this interface between our physical body, our psyche, and our spirit. So when we're working with trauma, we're often dealing right in the middle there because it impacts you on all those levels, right? You may have physical triggers. You may have, if you experienced physical trauma in particular, you may have PTSD symptoms of triggers being activated by different sounds or situations. That happens in your nervous system, right? And your chakra system interacts with your nervous system. So we'll work with, how do we do, what type of chakra activations help to soothe and regulate your nervous system? And most importantly, how can you use those in the moment that you need them? And in that particular example, I would work a lot with the root chakra, the foundational chakra at the base of the chakra system, because it's all about being able to stay present in the moment with a regulated nervous system, even when it starts to become anxious or fearful based on something that's happened around you. Then there's all these emotional imprints around trauma that, depending on the type of trauma, I work with a lot of sexual trauma survivors. So there can be a lot of feelings of unworthiness, blaming themselves. There can be fears around physical contact or fears of sexual energy, etc. So those are all stored, they all obstruct different chakras. Like feelings of unworthiness really block the heart, right? Feelings of shame really block the second chakra. So we'll be working with those emotions, trying to help clear them out, bring forth the most pure expression of that chakra, and that helps to clear the trauma imprints over time from body, mind, and psyche and spirit.
So, Lisa, would it be okay to even deal with energy? Well, it, energetically, trauma is emotional, energetic trauma.
Mm,
It's because once we experience it, we create the energy to attach to the experience.
mm,
And if it's not dealt with, it stays within us. It changes the
mhm.
biochemistry of our body. Would that be true?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the psychological definition of trauma is often something we experienced that we couldn't integrate. So we just sort of pushed it down in a way. We weren't able to process it. We weren't able to go through it and really understand and process it, integrate it into our psyche. It was too much to handle. So then it's like it's in a box that keeps bursting open when we don't want it to, right? It's stored there in our body and it takes us over in moments of fear or anxiety or certain triggering events, right? So we have to gently open this box, you might say, to build up the ability to process what happened and also to repattern the emotions that have developed that were trying to keep us from facing it, right? The patterns that have kept us from facing it. And then parts of it can release, and parts of it then it's about repatterning, rewiring, kind of remaking yourself emotionally and energetically to deal with the world in a new way that's not defined by that past event.
I call it, being baptized and resurrected into like a rebirth.
It is. And really energy work in a way is doing that over and over, right?
Mhm.
That's what you're doing. You're repatterning yourself. Doesn't always happen as quickly as we might like a baptismal experience. Sometimes it does. Often it's more, it's slower, but it's absolutely possible. It's
I
absolutely
honestly believe
possible.
that that's what, back in like, if you look at ancient texts, ancient writings, that's they were describing it just like you described it, but now it's been so twisted and converted to where it created a different narrative, and we
Yeah.
and we lost. It's like a lost representation of the truth.
In terms of being born again, what it means to
Yeah.
be born again. Yeah.
Yes.
I tend to view it that way too, especially if you look at Indian teachings on Kundalini and spiritual awakening. So many of those experiences are so similar. And you find experiences like that throughout all different spiritual traditions, energy medicine traditions. So yeah, different ways of talking about it, but then it gets couched in different philosophy and theology in different places.
And I'm like that. Yeah, that's, yeah, because then it's like a lie, and then you have a false identity or a misconception
Yeah.
and believing in something that's not really true, and
Yeah.
that's another trauma.
I have definitely worked with people from a lot of different spiritual religious backgrounds where it felt that they had to overcome things that had been imprinted on them related to that limited them, that held them back, you know. And it can
Well,
also in some people's life play a very supportive role, but it's all how it's processed and held by the
yes,
person.
and a lot of it is about shame, and you have to be a certain way. You have to,
Control.
yeah, control, intimidation, and fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Fear of source.
Unfortunately,
Fear of
yeah.
source instead of source is love.
And I just like, it's sad, but I'm like, well, thank God I woke up.
Yeah.
I am so grateful that I'm not in that program,
Mm.
because it is a program.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when you're dealing with those kind of, you know, when you mentioned earlier about the energy and that trauma, and if the energy is not dealt with to be able to process and heal, you wind up going through life attracting similar experiences that
Yeah.
come to you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, why does this keep happening to me?
Yeah.
Recognize a pattern. Something, you can
Yeah.
always find the solution by getting to the root of it and then being set free.
Yeah. Yeah, if you feel unworthy, if some part of you deep down is holding this imprint of unworthiness, then you feel that's how you deserve to be treated. So then that is the relationships that you are going to be in over and over because of that feeling, right? Which isn't to excuse any abuse and blame any victim, but the real path to being empowered to change that is healing that feeling of unworthiness and tapping into your inner worth, right? And the same goes for shame or any other pattern that someone might develop. Yeah,
Yeah,
as the
guilt.
result of trauma, guilt. Yeah.
And that causes you to operate in such a frequency and vibration that it can manifest in a sickness, a disease,
Mm,
because anything of energy has to form into a matter, which is a physical.
mm,
So that does happen a lot. Would you
yeah.
agree?
Absolutely. And I think the thing about things like guilt, also people pleasing patterns, if someone was raised to really try to please others continuously, all of those kinds of patterns, guilt, shame, they cause you to take on others' energy because you feel as if you have no right to boundaries. You feel like it's your job. You're supposed to. That's how you please them. That's how you resolve your guilt, that it's your job to take it on. So you're taking on other people's energies, and that has to go somewhere. And all too often, it becomes negativity that builds up in your own body, right? So boundaries are so important. A huge amount of my work with trauma survivors and really everyone, I think, women in particular, is learning how to develop those boundaries, not take that stuff on.
And you study in specialize with women's energetics and
Mm,
life transits. Can
mm.
you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, women, the energy body connects both, as we said, to the physical body and to spirit. We could say at the level of spirit, it's ungendered, right? But at the level of body, it is, right? And you may define however you want, but we have different biological processes. If you're a woman who menstruates, who maybe experiences pregnancy or postpartum, perimenopause, menopause, and it actually changes our energy body. In general, we are more absorbent, we are more empathic, and so we need more work on boundaries. And then when it comes to different parts of our cycle, postpartum, perimenopause, we become even more absorbent. So knowing how to care for our energy body, knowing how to define our boundaries becomes even more important. And then those things can become powerful, or those transits in our life can actually become powerful times of transformation because we know how to work with the energy. We're not afraid of it. We don't think of it as being something wrong with us or bad. We can work with it as transformation.
Oh my gosh. I'm just like starting to experience menopause now. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And I kept telling myself because, I've been around, women and they're like, menopause this and menopause that.
Mm,
And I kept telling myself, I'm not going to go through menopause like that.
mm,
I'm not buying into that program. I'm
mhm,
going to go through menopause the way I want to go through
mhm,
menopause. The least amount of whatever. Just stop having my period and just move on.
mm.
And celebrate that I got through it.
Yeah.
And so
How's
far,
that going?
I know what they mean by hot flashes now.
Yeah.
At first, I didn't know what was happening. I was like, why is it getting all of a sudden hot? And I'm blowing the air C in my face and open up the freezer. And oh gosh, that feels so good. And then my partner was like, oh, you're going through menopause. I'm like, I'm what?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what this is? Okay. Let's see how long this lasts. And I'm like, just let it be 30 days. 30 days. That's all that way I could say I experienced it and 30 days is up. I'm good.
Did that work?
Um, you know what? Now it's like I'm getting my period, but now I only get the hot flashes when I get my period. So I'm like, well, this is new. This is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. What's so interesting is that hot flashes are also associated with Kundalini rising, with the spiritual energy coming through the energy body. It has for generations been associated with that, right back to the earliest writings. So, really, it's interesting. I believe we are going through sort of energy surges. And if I know they're not comfortable, so do whatever you need to handle them. But if we can really kind of reframe them psychologically as this is an energy surge. What could I do with this? I've seen so many women, including myself, because I'm through it, I'm 55, really transform their lives and own, in particular, new spiritual gifts arise during this time. And that is the real power of it. So be on the lookout, Kimberly. They're coming.
Woo! I'm all for those gifts. I do have uh one of my gifts and being very intuitive, having the bullshit detector radar.
Mm,
And it took me a while to understand that. And then I caught like light bulb went on. I'm like, oh, well,
Mhm.
thank you for that one. But I also channel.
Yeah.
I always wondered about, okay, who created language? How
Mm.
did they communicate back then?
Yeah.
Where did things originate and created? And then, you know, where did religion originate from? How did that get birthed and
Mm.
formed and whatnot? So that's like where I ask a question everything. And
Yeah.
it's funny how it comes to me, but I always was fascinated of the languages.
Yeah.
How did, the Sumerians talk? What did it
Mm.
sound like?
Mm.
How did they communicate with one another? And then you got the Assyrians and the Babylonians,
Mm.
and, it just, people came and created civilizations and they had their languages.
Mm. Yeah.
It will not, so I find that fascinating. Now I'm actually channeling those languages.
Mm.
I don't
Yeah.
understand a word I'm saying, but when they come in and I'm like, wow, when I come to and I listen to myself, I'm like, man, I speak their language like a native, but
Yeah.
yet I can't speak French or Italian or
Yeah. You're
Spanish.
receiving ancient wisdom, right, through ancient languages. Yeah.
So, and that's been a fascinating experience, and I'm very grateful. I'm like, wow, I'm going to go along. I know there's a purpose for this. I know there's a reason why I'm doing this.
Yeah. Well, and that's a throat chakra gift. That's the other thing. The chakras are a great framework for looking at different types of gifts, right? So
Hmm.
that's sort of a crown in terms of receiving the download and throat chakra, profound throat chakra gift to speak. Yeah.
And someone told me that, oh, wow, you're a DNA activator. And I'm like,
Mm.
a DNA activator, what? And they're like, yeah, you do it on a cellular level just by
Mm.
you speaking. And I've had clients tell me, like, oh my gosh, I felt something in my throat. I feel
Right.
something in here, or
Yeah.
like down below. And I'm like, oh, okay, you're
Yeah.
getting a healing
Yeah.
and then an upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that you feel so physically in the body because, like with trauma in particular, it's so important that the client stays connected to their body. And
Mhm.
modalities that are more astral often don't work for trauma clients because may have patterns of disassociating from their body in a way that's not helpful. So learning to be present and be like, oh, I feel it here in my chest. I feel the block in my throat. I feel the block in my sacral. Working right there to repattern the body is really the most helpful kind of energy work in those cases.
Absolutely. And I just, yeah. And in how you mentioned about the the kundalini,
Mm.
and then women going through menopause, the surge,
Mm.
and from your own experience, can you give an example how you took that and like use that power,
Mhm.
that energy to help you?
Yeah. Well, for anyone that's open to actually doing a little bit of chakra meditation each day, I really recommend just on the very basics, going through all seven chakras and visualizing white light just very gently flowing through during this time, especially on days when you're having hot flashes, because you want to have this sense that that energy is surging and flowing. And then grounding. Those surges are like electricity going through an electrical socket, and you don't want to blow the wattage out. So you have to be grounded. So then contact with the earth element, physical exercise, water, all of these things can help to smooth the energy, keep you grounded so that you're able to process it. And then a lot of the work is psychological in terms of reframing instead of, oh, this is awful. Yeah, it doesn't feel comfortable. Put the fan on, do whatever you have to do. But also, oh, okay, I'm experiencing an energy surge. This isn't just happening in this moment, this whole phase of my life. What do I want my life to look like on the other side of this? This is my chance to totally transform, grow into greater power. You're not going to be tied to a monthly cycle anymore. In a way, it's a growing into more energetic power as you transition to this state and to really own it as that, not as an ending. It is an ending, and sometimes you have to grieve that. Sometimes women do need to grieve. The idea that they can never have more children or things like that, right? But if you can do that grieving, but also embrace it as no, these are my most powerful wisdom years. I'm growing into my truest self.
Well, at
Yeah,
least
is
it's
that
not for nothing, but I'd be like celebrating when I don't have to wear a
well,
manhole cover or a diaper.
that's how a
Hello.
lot of women feel. It's very different who feels what. Yeah, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. And then,
It's a
you get the
freedom.
leaks and then you got the stain and then you got to pre-treat and then you got to try to wash it out. Sometimes that stain does not come out.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
I've been
very
doing this
liberating. I was the same way. I'm like ready to go.
getting get a shampoo bottle and do my dance.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh my gosh, like
Saves a lot of money too.
oh my god, I could be a millionaire right now. I'm telling you. Oh, at least have over 100 G's in my bank account.
Exactly. Oh, wow.
Oh, and then you got three, daughters to go with it. Oh God, here we go.
Yep. I have 2 of those. Yep.
Now, is there truth when you're dealing with female issues? That's the root, the sacral, and you got the solar. Those are more of the emotional chakras. Especially if you don't deal with some like emotional trauma, they mainly go to one of the three chakras. Now, if you have an issue, or experience trauma from the parent, it most likely will affect the female organs or even the male organs based on, I guess, the being that you're in.
Yeah.
And it can cause issues. It manifests in a reproductive issue.
Yeah. And sexual trauma too. So I think, these do tend to, uh, represent in, like, reproductive related issues. Yeah, everything from ovarian cysts, uterine fibroids, to different kinds of cancers, right? So that's what you're dealing with energetically often, for sure.
And a lot of it could be healed when you deal with the root emotion of what, like when you get to the source of, okay, this is the issue, and then you ask the right questions, you find the root of how it was created and
Yeah,
got to where it was.
yeah. And then
And
you
then
can
once you
repattern
deal
it.
with it, it sort of disappears.
Yeah. And then you could rewrite it if it was like a held belief in some way or a held experience that had never been processed. You can rewrite it, reframe it, reclaim that energy and that part of your body. Especially with sexual trauma, a lot of people will disconnect from their whole lower body. They disassociate. They live up in the upper chakras. I'll meet a lot of people really well developed third eye, but totally unconnected to their lower chakras because they can't deal with the obstructions, you could say, these emotional patterns that you're talking about that are stored there. So they have to kind of go back down into that lower subtle body and deal and rewrite all of those things and patterns. And then there's more flow through the whole subtle body, and there's balance because we're really meant to have all 7 chakras fully open and functioning and flowing.
Well, then when one gets clogged up and doesn't operate and flow, it causes a domino effect
Hmm.
eventually to all the others. And then that's where, let's just say, shit hits the fan
Yep,
with our body. It
that's
could
right.
literally shut down.
Exactly. And it will. Sometimes that's the only way to get the message across that change has to happen, right?
Oh, yeah. I've heard stories and read about, because I love neuroscience too,
Yeah, yeah.
and quantum physics and metaphysics and whatnot. And there's three, I call them my three musketeers. Um, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe
Hmm.
Dispenza, and Greg Braden.
Yeah, yeah,
They just, especially Greg Braden when he talked about energy and women bringing life,
yeah,
and imagine being in the womb, whatever the mother is going through, whatever she's experiencing, so is that baby
yeah,
that's in the womb.
yeah,
And I was like, I was in my mother's womb, and my mother was in her mother's room. And then I'm looking in the 1920s, the Great Depression, you know,
yeah.
uh, Then you had the World War One. Then you had, all these wars, and then when I was, 1968, there was Vietnam.
Yeah.
So I got all that energetic trauma.
Yeah, we have this ancestral trauma that gets passed down. Yeah, in
And I
our
don't think
DNA.
people realize, like, the reason. And then look at all the hatred and the racism. That's
Yeah,
all a program and an energy that's been passed on for centuries.
that's right. Yeah. When you heal yourself and when you work on these energetic patterns, that's right. You are actually working on some level, not just with your individual experiences, but with these ancestral patterns, these historical patterns, this cultural conditioning and imprinting. And use the phrase woke up. Like you're waking up from all of that. You're trying to liberate yourself from all of that so you can truly just be in pure source energy, right? That's what waking up is. When you're dealing with emotional patterns, it's healing. Eventually, it kind of crosses over into spiritual awakening, but they're so connected. They're so
I know.
connected.
It's like history and science and spirituality is all in tangent and connected together.
Yeah.
And so is the limited beliefs, the programs, and traumas. They're all connected somehow.
Yeah.
We're connected as I would say, a fucked up dysfunctional family
Yeah,
with different colors, different sizes. You know?
absolutely.
And I'm like, y'all, we need to wait. Like, aren't you tired of history repeating itself? Like I am. What about you? You
Yeah.
know? And it has to come, if it's going to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
people just don't believe it, I think that's the sad thing. At a certain point, someone stops believing things can be different for them, right? And so really igniting that energy within them of belief is often the first step, the most important thing, which to me is crown chakra. I do a lot. If I come across someone like that who's just stopped believing anything can ever be different, we're going to start with receiving light into the crown and just coming all the way down through the whole body for a while to just reignite that sense of hope. Yes, you can change this. You can.
And this disbelief
Yeah.
of, we are powerless. We're just human beings. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm a spiritual being, sexual being inside this human being.
Yeah.
I chose to come in this redhead form and be a female or
Yeah.
with female organs. And, I'm pretty much liking myself. More and
Yeah.
more I look in my mirror, I'm like, damn, girl, you look good today.
Good for you.
You know?
Well, that's right. We made all this. We can make something different. That's the point, right?
And if you don't like
Yeah.
how you look in the mirror, you could do something about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, take care of it. No, I'm on this transition of, bit by bit, piece by piece, transforming into more a healthy, healthy eating,
Yeah.
but it's like baby steps for me. And then I realized, well, I'm looking around going, okay, there's people that go on a diet. They're like, they focus themselves. I'm going to go out, change my diet, change my eating habits. That's all great. And then I'm going to exercise, do this. That's just great. But then I'm like, well, that's all good and whatnot. But what are you doing to the biggest organ of your body, your skin?
Mm. Yeah.
How are you, like, this is part of self-care,
Yeah.
and I've discovered, several things like, wow, I didn't like connect that. Like, it is important of what I put on my skin, what I put on my hair, what I put on my face, so it all goes
Yeah.
and complements. This is the temple. This is the body. This is a
Yeah.
machine that my soul is in. It's like I'm a ghost,
Yeah.
but you're just seeing the machine that I'm in.
This is the vehicle and we have to take care of it. I think that's so important too. I don't know if you run across this, but I run across a lot of people who are very spiritual who sort of don't take care of their body. They think, oh, my spirit's more important. And they almost denigrate the body. And you have to, this is your vehicle for experiencing spirit. And you have to take care of it, right? And I would add to it energy self-care. Like for me, there's things you need to do with your energy body, with your chakras, just to keep everything clear and flowing. They're all connected. All these levels are connected.
Oh, yes, because
Yeah.
I do I watched a movie, I got the book, and I got the product, and it's earth grounding.
Mm,
Like, getting barefoot and just stick your feet
mm.
on the grass and just soak up like, that's
Nothing
how
better.
another form of getting grounded, and then to cleanse and clear any negative energy. Because 'cause I'm so empathic and
Yeah.
highly sensitive, especially since I started, this menopause journey of mine.
Yeah.
When channeling is their frequency on the other side is based on what civilization I'm dealing with, or angelic realm, or even a highly evolved extraterrestrial realm. Their frequencies go up, and it's
Yeah.
like sometimes I'm holding on to the edge of the chair just to go through the process to give the message.
Yeah.
And then I'm breaking and going, okay, time out, time out, time out. This body needs a rest, kind of
But you
thing.
know what? I feel like you're already going through the transit, the perimenopausal transit, with these changes you're making regarding your self-care of your vehicle, because you're trying to increase your wattage to be able to take, and that is such a classic transit of this time. When you get to the other side of this, your body is going to be able to manage such a high frequency of light for a longer period of time, right? Yeah,
Right.
the grounding that you're doing, the self-care of the body, that's all sort of classic upgrade stuff for when you're bringing through such a high frequency.
And then the water, the ocean or the
Mm,
pool, I gotta be by water.
mm.
Like, I'll
Yeah.
sit there and float. I went snorkeling for the first time, and oh my god, I was like a little kid on, Christmas Day kinda thing.
Yeah,
I didn't
amazing.
wanna get out. I
Yeah,
actually snorkeled for over an hour and a half.
that's
I
great.
was just like, I got my mask on and
Yeah.
my snorkel, and I'm going by the fishes going, "Hi, fishies, I'm so close to y'all, like, hey, it's
Such a
me."
happy world, right? Such a
Oh
happy
my gosh, just
place.
being underwater, I was just like, I felt at home.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Like,
great.
I felt connected, like, that's why I just needed that experience, and now it's like, "Okay, I'm gonna get my own mass
Yeah,
snorkel fin,
yeah.
and I gotta go snorkeling.
That's great.
Whenever
Good
I
for
can,
you.
that's my go-to, like,
Yeah.
and then I come back and I was just, like, over an hour and a half, I wasn't even tired, I was like, "Wow, I feel so energized, like, I feel like I'm, like, grounded, centered. Wow, let's go
Yeah,
dancing, let's go do this, let's go."
yeah. You completely cleared out.
Oh my god, I'm like, "Y'all, if you want some, good medicine, just do some
Snorkel.
energy work
Yeah,
and then connect with what you connect with."
yeah,
Like, I could be in the mountain being Virgo, I'm Earth, so I'm mutable, but I can be in the mountains
yeah,
doing my thing, in a river, or be in the ocean,
yeah.
you know?
Trees are great. So water is great. Also just being with trees, because so much prana, that green life energy and the
Mhm.
anchoring, the root, feeling those roots going down into the earth, that so I feel like water and trees are 2 of the best for upping your wattage in that way and clearing out.
Hug
Yeah,
a tree.
yeah. Like a
If you
tree,
can put your
exactly.
arm around it, hug it.
And those are root and sacral chakra, because root chakra is connected to the earth element and sacral to the water element. So that's what you're doing with those 2 activities, the root and sacral, that foundation of the chakra system.
Wow, now, because 'cause you're so like-minded like me, and I'm just, like, so resonating right now. But do you ever feel like like, you're doing something ahead of time? Because you just brought it up to my attention. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just felt led
Yeah.
to do it. But you're doing something prophetic, not knowing what you're doing, and then you find out, "Oh, so that's why I was doing that. I was getting ready for this thing."
All the time. In retrospect, it always makes sense, right? But that
Oh,
means you're
well,
intuitively guided. That means you're in tune enough with that intuitive guidance that you're being drawn to the right. It is you are doing it. You do know it. It may just not have gotten into your conceptual mind yet why, you know?
right. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of spirituality, because you can have a knowing conception
Mm,
is
yeah.
totally different than the experiential
Yeah. Yeah.
knowing.
Yeah.
Got a conceptual knowing, but there's an
The
experience.
mystic, the energetic, the
Yeah.
mystic and energetic. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm just so in. goal manifestation, how do you use
Mm,
energy to manifest, like, how do you help clients
mm,
manifest their goal through energy work? How
yeah.
do you go about doing that?
Well, I have a few different methods, but because I really am chakra driven, I use what's called the downward path of the chakras. So we often talk about energy going up through the chakras. That's the spiritual awakening path. The downward path is the manifesting path, meaning crown is inspiration, third eye is visioning, throat chakra is being able to communicate what it is that you want to manifest. Heart is being a lot of different things, but mostly being able to attract the support, the resources that you need. Navel, a solar plexus, that is action plan and being able to execute on those actions. Sacral is the inspiration to, and fluidity to adapt as obstacles arise. And then the root chakra is the actual physical manifestation. And those bottom three, execution, encountering an obstacle, and then bringing something to reality, you may go through a few times um, to get to your goal. But so we work with this idea of this downward path and empowering this over and over, from inspiration all the way down to reality. And you can kind of use that to identify, where are you blocked? Some people, they're great at ideas, they never execute. Some people are down here in the weeds. They're great executors, but they never have the big vision. Some people never attract resources. They'll never ask for help. They'll never network. So you can use this model in a lot of different ways to really both energetically empower and see where your blocks are and where you need to do some work.
You know what? That's impressive.
You like
Totally
that?
different way. Yes, I love it. It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, because I had a good mentor, and he's still around, Dr. Hecker, T.
Mm,
Hecker. Yeah, and he did it like in a four. You know, you
mm,
got the spiritual, right, and then you got the mind, the thought, T for
mm,
thought. Then I imagine. Then it goes
mm,
S into spirit, and then
mm,
it goes R to reality.
mm.
The first the thought, and then you can vision it, you could see it. So it's already in the spiritual realm. You created that energy
Yeah.
through the vision. And then it's just focusing on that, because energy goes where attention,
Yeah.
or energy flows where attention goes, or something
Yeah.
to that. So then as long as you stay focused, yeah, you're going to experience things to get to that. There'll
Yeah.
be setbacks, which is a setup for a comeback.
Yeah.
And then boom, it manifests.
Yeah. And you just have to have that action piece in there. And a lot of people get stuck. They're like, they're visioning, they're doing their vision boards, et cetera, et cetera. But then they don't bring in those lower chakra stuff. Yeah, you still got to act in alignment with that, so the universe can give you some feedback, right? But your response, maybe you take an action step and the result isn't what you thought. You put out a new product for a business and it fails, right? And you're like, I did my vision. I was so aligned. I had everything. Well, what's the feedback? And then you tweak it just a little bit and you have a huge hit, bigger than you ever could have imagined, right? Like you said, a setup for the comeback, right? So
Hmm.
you have to be able to have the vision, stay true to that vision, act, allow the universe to give you feedback. That feedback may sometimes feel like a setback, but then if you adapt and adjust and you stay in alignment, eventually you birth your goal, sometimes bigger and better even than you could imagine on your own.
Well, you're just, I would say, perfecting it. You're practicing until it,
Yeah.
boom. It's like that perfect thing. And it's
Yeah.
like with my show, like I've had several different backdrops. Now I got that, like once I saw this, I was like, that's it. Because I was practicing on what my backdrop was. I was
Yeah.
practicing, like every season I changed my intro.
Mm.
You know, I was just trying to see and feel, like, through trial and error, which was going to really pop up at me and
Yeah. Feel right.
with me. And that's
Mm.
part of my branding.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
mine is inspiration, but I got the sun rising. That to me is, and the ocean. So that's like
Mm.
my little thing, you
That's
know.
beautiful. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it is a process, and it's also when you think about that vision of what it is that, like, Dr. Joe explained it perfectly. He goes, stop and think about what you want to do.
Mm.
It's your future self. Picture your future self.
Mm.
What does it look like? And then what are you doing? And most important, how are you feeling at that moment,
Mhm.
seeing yourself doing that? Or what do you see yourself? How do you see yourself feeling?
Yeah.
Pay attention to the expression, the body language. What are they wearing? And I was like, wow, that was the key element in law of attraction. Yeah,
Mhm.
a lot of people vision,
Mhm. But you have
but
to feel it.
they don't feel it. Like, yeah, I can see myself doing it. But okay,
Yeah.
you can see yourself doing that, but how are you feeling doing it?
Yeah. Because that's vibration. When you tap into feeling, our emotions, our feelings, you're shifting your vibration to be in alignment with that as real. Yeah.
And your mind doesn't know the difference of what is actually real and not real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Love it.
find that fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that's what we're doing whenever we practice energy work. Yeah, sometimes you're clearing, releasing, but then when you get to the point where you're opening up it to source light through a particular chakra or however you're working, you're practicing the new you, and maybe at first you just get glimpses of it in meditation or in an energy work session. But if you keep going, eventually that becomes the new you all the time, right? You have to practice it first, feel it in little snippets, and eventually you've repatterned yourself.
I
Yeah.
rehearse every day. Like when I'm sitting outside, meditating, I'm
Mm,
actually rehearsing because I'm getting ready to start workshops.
right.
And I'm trying to, and then I have I have to give kudos and a shout out. I'm wearing this beautiful necklace. It
Oh,
looks,
lovely.
it's silver and it
Silver
looks,
and gold, is it both?
no, it's silver.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just silver. I know now that silver is like one of my best elements to wear. And
Oh,
I
I
always
consider it
just want to
protection. I consider silver protection. Is that how you view it, or?
I don't know, I just, like, resonate with it, but I love
Yeah.
your necklace too.
Yeah, that's
But I
lapis
think, like,
lazuli.
I used to
Yeah.
be gold, but gold I'd have a reaction,
Mm,
like, it would turn colors of some sort, and I would test it, and it would be like, "Yep, that's 14 karat, that's 10 karat,
yeah.
this is 18 karat gold."
It's
But
not
my
the right metal for you.
electricity is not, it would never, so I just stopped wearing gold.
Yeah.
But
I'm
now
the
I
same
love.
way. And I view silver as it's a protective energy. So for empaths, it can be particularly good. Yeah.
Well, I am very highly sensitive empathic, so I'm getting more silver, and
Yeah.
it's by Pretty Bling Boutique, and I didn't want to go out and buy expensive jewelry, but I have to. Like when I'm in front of a camera, I got to wear something.
Yeah.
This is a longer one, so but I got earrings. I'm not into big hoops, so I just wanted
Yeah.
something to where I look good in front of a camera.
Yeah.
So she hooked me up, and I'm like,
Yeah.
girl, I gotta invest in more jewelry so I can wear it on the show. So I
That's
give her a
awesome.
shout out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kimberly. But then even with my makeup, like, I don't know if people realize when you're in front of like lights,
Mhm.
even the fluorescent lightings, the light bulbs in the, room and whatnot in front of the camera. And yeah, it does
Yeah.
take a toll on your skin. So you better
Yeah.
have right kind of makeup to
Yeah.
wear. And I'm all about the healthy. What am I putting on my skin? And I found a
Yeah.
company. So it's now I want to educate people on, the health benefits between the European standard and then the American standard of, this is what they eliminate in Europe and
Yeah.
banned and only this in the US. So
Yeah.
I'm practicing presenting facts, visuals. So it's like I'm actually putting slides together and I'm having fun with it and I'm learning too at the same time.
Yeah. That's great. So that's part of your next iteration too, these workshops and
Oh yeah.
yeah, the new
I can't
you.
wait for the workshops though because
Yeah.
it's all about ancient history and connecting the dots. And I
Yeah.
will be, talking about Reiki and, what it was like back then and whatnot.
Yeah.
And there was a good man who was a great, He was, to me, like a master. He became one of the master teachers and
Mm,
whatnot. And a lot of people got his name mixed up and think his name is Jesus, but it's not. It's Yeshua, which in
mm,
Arabic and Hebrew is actually Joshua.
mm,
Just saying, pointing out some facts there. But he did go to India. He did go to Asia to study energy work.
mm. Yeah,
Then he went to Egypt to study and learn about reincarnation.
yeah,
I find that fascinating. He lived
yeah,
there and resided there. There's a shrine over there in Egypt,
yeah,
where he used to reside and whatnot. I was like, dang, he traveled. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. A lot of lost years there, right? That aren't accounted for. That,
Oh, no, they don't want you to
went to a
talk
lot of
about,
places. Yeah.
but it's
Mm.
written in other places, though. I find that
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, he studied reincarnation and he did energy work.
Yeah.
Like, because I kept saying when I grow up, I want to just be like him. I want to do what he
Did
did.
you? Well,
Yes.
and the city, they're called in India, they're called cities, right? These powers, these of healing and transforming, and they're classically associated with a spiritual master, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But
that's
this
strange
has
in
been
those
going
things.
on since um energy work has been going on since Thoth,
Yeah,
Atlantis, the
yeah,
Atlantinian. He was Atlantinian, but he was also the son of Enki, who actually helped create him and Ninhursag. From my understanding and reading,
mm,
he's the one that created the chakra system
mm.
for us to have knowledge
To
and
be able to
wisdom.
utilize. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Well, and a
But
lot of people believe in ancient Egypt, we were more in touch with our subtle bodies, and we could do things in our subtle bodies just with our mind, because in ancient Atlantis and in early days of Egypt, right? And then we gradually got like more and more physical. So now it's hard for a lot of people to access their energy body. But once you do, there's this whole other world that opens up to you. But it used to be just how we all were. We all walked around with that kind of connection to our energy body, you know?
And then there was a catastrophe. I know there was greed and power and control and manipulation, you know, that was constant in battle with these highly evolved beings that, were Anunnaki because they were considered gods. They
Mm.
were fighting against each other, having sex with each other and with human beings.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, didn't I get the memo or something like that shit's not gonna work? You gotta come up with
Yeah.
a better plan. Kind of thing. But I find it fascinating that I just got done reading a book, like the symbolism, like with the serpent, the
Yeah.
snake. That goes back to India
Yeah.
and even in Asia. The dragon and the snake, and then you
Yeah,
got
and
the
they
eagle.
recur over and over, that symbol recurs over and over and very often linked to transformation, to kundalini, to the
And
rising
it's
up
the
of the
good
energy.
guy. It's like
Yeah,
and then when I find out, about the animal totems, the snake represents spirituality, the
yeah,
kundalini
yeah,
and whatnot. So I just like the more it's like I dug a rabbit hole in my DNA on this ancestry, the
yeah,
ancient civilization in our history, and I don't mind it. I find
yeah,
more fascinating new things. They're not new; they've been there all along. It was just waiting for me to show up and come
yeah,
on in.
yeah.
Did you
Cool.
find that on your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think I turn to a lot of different traditions, and certainly for me, I have a very strong connection to ancient Egypt. I don't know if I have actually it's Ma'at up here. It's kind of got a glare on it so you can't see it, who is the kind of the representation of truth, of karma. So all of that stuff definitely plays a part of my work. Like part of healing sexual trauma is sort of also persecution healing is I do a lot of work with like past life persecution healing, which is trauma from past lives. You could say a lot of healers and intuitives and mystics who were persecuted, right?
Mhm.
Burned at the
I
stake,
I
thrown to the
I
lions.
think I was.
This is a big part of history too. We carry those imprints too. So I think that's a big part of my work. And it's partially because of my own connection to teachings from ancient Egypt and Ma'at. kind of making restitution for that persecution. How do we allow people now to own their gifts and be safe sharing them with others and clear the wounds and the fear around not doing so, especially for women? Because most, for example, in the witch burnings, there were men burned as well, but it was like 90% women, right? 90% healers that were women and things like that. So there's a lot of healing to be done around that as well.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna have to hook up a session with you. I could barter, like, I could do a channeling session with you, and you can help me figure that one
Persecution
out.
healing. Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Um, but then also, if you now I want to ask this question to see if you know about this from ancient Egypt with Isis.
Mm,
They did sexual rituals
mm,
to help connect to that higher dimensions.
mm. Yeah. Well, and that continued through other traditions. There's Tantra in India and Tibet and things like that. And there's Celtic traditions. There's a lot of different traditions around sacred sexuality. Sexuality is not just physical, it's energetic, and it's such a powerful experience. It creates life. How could it not have the potential to be a mystic spiritual doorway as well, right? But we have so much shame attached to it that it's hard sometimes for people to own that it has these other levels to it.
And I think that's how religion started, because they knew they didn't want us to have that,
Yeah, so it
that
became
wisdom,
about
that knowledge. So they turned around and twisted it, and you know,
made
and
sex
yeah,
dangerous, bad, evil, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that's what I'm going to be talking about on my workshops. But
Oh,
yeah,
good for you.
I have
Love it.
a good connection with Isis. And you know what? Sex is just synergistic energy exchange.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
all it is. And when you have that energy that just comes up from within, but then you see somebody and they have that, it's more intense. You just created another third energy. And
yeah,
it does get to the point where you're going to have to physically release that energy.
yeah,
But it is the most amazing and beautiful thing when just two consensual adults, they feel it's not like love at first sight. No, it's there is a chemistry between you two, and it could be from a past life and it's come to this lifetime just to reconnect. That's it.
yeah, and have that exchange. Yeah,
And it could be, would you agree, just for that moment, it could be that that's all it was for, is for you to connect so you can heal from the past life.
sure. In certain cases, I mean, I think it can play out in so many different kinds of ways. There's so many ways we might come together with someone, right? And for some people, that may be part of it. Right? And it's a very powerful transformative experience if both people honor it in that way.
Yeah, and I think there's, with, this, like, to be honest, that we got to stop with the sex trafficking stuff. Why not?
Yeah.
I know how you can make good money just by having an adult swingers club somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
It doesn't need to be
it
this way.
doesn't, and I never
It can
understood. I'm
be
like, what do
empowering.
you understand about the swingers club? Like, man, that's $1 billion industry. You can have your own private adult club, and it could be a swingers party. They did that in Julius Caesar's time. They were having orgies. They were having orgies since so long ago.
Yeah.
Everyone got together and they were enjoying that sexual energy. That's it.
Without shame, without the
Yeah.
shame. Yeah. That's the piece that's so damaging. Yeah. The
And
shame.
I'm hoping and looking forward to everyone waking up to that, realization that, hey, it's okay to be you. you know,
Yeah.
no shame, just be you. That's my favorite quote now. Free to be me.
Yeah. Love it. Perfect.
I'm free to be me. If you don't like me, oh well.
Yeah, exactly. That is the freedom of menopause and age, right? Like
Like, oh wow,
you've
sexy
learned not to
me.
care anymore.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna be me.
exactly.
I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna live my life, and it's gonna be
Exactly.
full of experiences of joy and pleasure. And I'm just gonna continue to do that.
Love it. Love it. Right there with you. Love it.
I just encourage everybody to come on, let's get on this bandwagon together. We'll have a great
Yeah,
time.
find your joy. Cool.
So I do believe that I put your website down there,
Great. Enlightened Energetics. Yeah.
and they can book a session with you.
Yes, or buy one of my books if that's a cheaper option too. Chakra Empowerment for
Oh,
Women is the main one. Yeah,
yes.
that's probably the one the most relevant to today's discussion. Yeah, and that's available anywhere.
Absolutely. I was about to, you beat me to the punchline, girl.
Touchline.
Yes, I would encourage everybody, especially the women. Come on, you need to wake up. If you don't know why you're, experiencing what you're going through, maybe you do have a chakra block. Maybe you do
Yeah,
have some trauma that you're not aware of. And
yeah,
that's what I encourage everybody, not just women, but there's men too,
yeah.
and I think it's been okay. Let me ask you another one before we wrap this up. Do you think the masculine energy has been dominating
Yeah.
for a couple of decades and now it's shifting to more feminine?
Yeah, and we need to just come into balance so we all can own all sides of us. So things traits aren't, divided up, male, female, so we can all own all sides of us. And there's no toxic expression, no toxic masculinity, no toxic femininity, just divine masculinity and divine femininity, that we're all experiencing. I think that's in balance. It's what
Yeah.
we're trying to get to. Trying to get to. Not easy.
So I'm just, my masculine and my feminine. Right now, I
Yeah.
just feel more feminine than anything.
Yeah. Good. Because we
My
need to rise
masculine
at
only
that.
needs to come out when it needs to come out, honestly.
For protection, some usually, right? Yeah,
Yes, to stand my ground,
yeah,
speak my truth. And I've been practicing that more and more.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm also going through a phase where I'm just, I see, I observe, and then I'm like, I'm going to choose not to react, but how can I respond
mm,
for the greater good, for my highest good?
yeah,
And that I do not have to have this come again full circle.
yeah. Just
So
stay in
I'm
alignment.
learning that
Stay in
and I'm
alignment
like,
in the heart. Yeah,
yeah. And that's an interesting experience right now that I'm going through because it's, I recognize how much I've evolved because of the emotional mental abuse that I've experienced
mhm,
majority of my life, and then having it to come again. I'm like, oh, I recognize this is emotional and verbal abuse.
mhm. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done with that. Done with that.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I'm not going to react to this. Thank you that now I'm recognizing what
Mhm.
this is,
Yeah,
and I don't have to be a part of it.
yeah,
This is not what I signed up for, I don't think. So now it's like, okay, I'm ready to move on. Thank you. And I know I am so worthy of more and better and deserve nothing but the best.
yeah,
So I'm sharing that with all the women or even men. It doesn't
yeah.
matter. If you're the one
That's what we all deserve. We
that,
all deserve the best. Yeah,
you don't have to put up with emotional or verbal abuse.
yeah,
That is, I think, the worst kind. Physical
yeah,
abuse, you get a bruise. But I told this person, I'm like, you know what? What you speak it, you can't take it back
yeah,
because it already went in here.
yeah,
You can't erase it.
yeah,
So I'm like, this, and I'm just like, this is interesting. So I'm paying attention to what I'm saying at
yeah,
that moment. This is interesting. Okay. This sounds like something familiar.
yeah,
This is emotional and verbal abuse. Okay. This is what I'm experiencing. But I'm not going to react. I'm not going to respond.
yeah,
I'm just going to, I know the truth now. Now I seek truth and wisdom to help guide me on a better path.
yeah, yeah. Respond in a new way. Rewrite the story. Yep.
Mhm. And let me tell you
Love it.
something. That takes courage. That it I can't even describe the experience, really, but it was like I was calm and just calm and cool as a cucumber. And then when it was all done and over with, and I was like, wow, I can't even believe I got through that. Like, really?
Good for you. Yeah, you were just centered in your true
Wow.
self. Yeah. Yeah. That's what it feels like. That's amazing.
Because it does take more energy to get angry and than it
And
does just,
recover. You're spinning for hours after, right? As
well,
opposed to just
yeah,
cutting through
because
it.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was, this is first and then the second one in all in a weekend. And at first, when the words were spoken, I was like, wow, I was calm. And then hearing it, I was like, so is this, am I hearing truth coming from this person? Like, this is how they truly feel. And now it's coming out.
Mm.
Then I'm like, well, I don't want to be in a relationship if that's where their heart is. That's
Yeah.
not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I had to grieve. I had to mourn because I was creating this and it hurt. So I let myself go through the emotion and I just let it out. Let it out. It's okay. You don't want to hold
Mm.
on to this. Let this energy go. Yes, it's sad. Yes, it hurts. You've gone through this before, girl. Let's go through it again. And then, and then reflect. Like, is this how you want to be in a relationship? Is this what you want for the rest of your life? Girl, do I have to remind you like what you went through in marriage?
Yeah.
No, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's like having that self-talk of, you know, the both coins of what you've been through, what you're going through, and realizing,
And making that other
no.
choice. Yeah. Having the
So,
self-awareness. It takes courage and self-awareness, right?
oh
That's it.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So I am so glad that you joined me today. I love this kind of conversation with
Yeah,
you. I
great
really do.
conversation. Good to talk to you too. Wonderful.
And I definitely want to book a session with you.
Cool. Awesome. Enlightened energetics. Or just email. You can just email. You have my email.
Oh yes, I got your email. I'm gonna email you.
We'll exchange.
All
Cool,
right.
Kimberly. Great
And
to
I would
talk to
love
you.
for you to experience my channeling
Yeah, I was just
and
gonna
see
say
what
we'll
you get
exchange.
because I would love feedback too.
Who knows? Yeah, what comes through. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank
Okay.
you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks all of you. Bye.
Well, there you go. I love having these conversations, especially when it comes to energy work and how powerful we really are as human beings. We're all of energy, it's everywhere. And stay tuned. You never know who I'm going to get on this show with Wake Up with Casey.